Hello, and this is our Bible study on the spiritual world that we started in our last broadcast session. As you continue to look at the spiritual world and the reality of the spiritual world, one of the things that came to my mind, and I'm doing this like a small little talk, is one comment that was made to me because I had more close relationship with him of the first 7 thunders. I asked many scientific questions in order to understand the phenomena. And one of the phenomena that I have asked and got a good answer, analyzed, was I said, okay, you can see the spiritual world right now in reality. And I said, can you see in a photo? Let's say when a photo is taken, can you see on the photo if there's an angel there, is a demon there, or let's say you take a situation where you take a scenery in a crowd, and if there was a demon there and we capture it, how would it be? And according to his answer, it says all photos you cannot see. Of course, I'm also aware of some people who claim that through their photography that they captured certain phenomena. Well, let's analyze and talk about them. That when we have real case studies. At the moment, I have a test case, and so I could ask this person and say, look, let's take a photo, see whether you can see anything. He says, cannot. Then he said, what about a video? In a video, if let's say you are videoing a place or we are videoing a ministry and there's an angel there, and can you see the angel? And surprisingly, the answer that was given to me was yes. In a video, he can see the angel if the angel was behind that. Now that's makes a very, very interesting argument. I'll state the various principles first. And because we all know how the technology of photography and videography is produced. Videos, of course, record in a light wave in different bandwidth, and so a lot of different light waves get recorded, including sometimes those that we don't realize it records. Maybe it's beyond the frequency of the eye. We also know at the moment that in terms of sound waves, they are able to isolate the sound waves that between the vibration of 20 vibrations per second to 20,000 vibrations per second, actually is much lower for humans. Some say it's only about 16,000 vibrations per second. But let's take a rough figure of rounding off between 20 to 20,000. That's the only range of sound waves that humans can hear. Anything slower than 20 vibrations per second or faster than 20,000 vibrations per second are just inaudible. Humans cannot hear it. Now, in terms of light waves, we are also not sure whether in terms of photography cameras, and then later the camera is developed. Today it's digital camera, but long ago it was recorded and it was reflected into a photographic paper, so it's reprinted within certain range of colors, and they could not produce it beyond certain range of colors, and so we are not sure about the range of camera captured. But besides the range, even if the camera, let's say, can capture higher, we still might not be able to see it. So with all these things, I began to ask questions similar to sound waves. It's just like, if those of you who are not so scientific, let me simplify the argument. If humans can only hear 20 to 20,000 vibrations per second, any vibration above 20,000 per second, as far as the human ear is concerned, does not exist. there's no way they could pick it up. Anything slower than that. That is why today they invented the dog whistle. You know, the dog whistle, you blow and most people can't hear anything. But the dogs hear it and the dogs react to it because it's about 20,000 vibrations per second. So those things can exist outside the human range of detection. The question we ask between a video and a photo is, you could answer it in different ways. Number one, possibly the camera capture of the photo is less capturing less of the light waves than the video. That could be the cause. But we also know that the same camera that can capture video is the same camera that can capture a photo. So, was it just because the camera capture within certain frequency of light, and anything beyond it cannot capture, whereas the video can capture that much? That could be a simple answer, but I believe that that is not the answer. And so the second thing is, if we assume that the photo capture and the video capture are capturing the same amount of light waves, if they are, then we have to explain it in a different way. Can you see the argument? If the camera only capture that much, anything beyond here cannot be seen. And if the video capture that much, of course, they got a wider range. So, is point one the explanation for why a person with open vision can see things that can see the spiritual realm when they're captured by video, but cannot see the spiritual realm captured by camera? Is that a good explanation? I don't think so. Because I assume by default, see, every theory and every answer has a baseline of assumption. My first assumption is that the camera capture and the video capture are equal. Rather than the first point, I go for the second point, that the camera and the video capture the same amount of light. It's more logical since basically it's the same instrument, and one plays and one doesn't play. If I assume that to be correct, then I have to explain why he can see the spiritual realm captured on video but not the photo. I have to explain that. Because for the first seven thunders, he doesn't have to explain, he just describes his experience. But I'm interested in scientific analysis. So if we assume that it's the same range of capture, and he caught the range that he's seeing in the frequency, and of course if you and I look at the same video, if your eyes cannot see that frequency, then you still cannot see that frequency. My theory in a person's open vision is that they can detect certain frequencies because of some built-in in their natural or through accidents, like lightning strike or something change. Just like human beings are so different. I have a book about the differences of human beings in the natural. Like the heart can range from that small to that large. And I'm talking about healthy hearts. I mean as a genetic nature without it going within a range. Of course, we all know the heart size can range from, let's say, very small to a certain size. Anything beyond that would be considered unhealthy. Just like when you take the blood pressure, that within a certain range is healthy, and within below or higher than a certain range, then it is unhealthy for normal humans to function in. Give and take whatever assumptions we do in the study of the human body, because sometimes science is not exact and there are too many assumptions. A person might who know genetically be used to certain levels, and we take unhealthy, but a person is all the time healthy. As you know, there are always exceptions. But let's answer this question, and the answer to this question will help you understand the phenomena of the spiritual realm and seeing in the spirit. So I assume that the camera and the video are capturing the same thing, are the same amount of light, which means that I have to offer a different explanation than just saying that, oh, the camera capture less than the video. And this is my explanation. In a video, there are actually many frames, and each frame is being played roughly 33 frames per second. You'll remember this, you remember this little thing that we used to do when we were small, and how the thing move. I cannot quite move it nicely because it's just a rough thing, and how the thing move, and when you look at the thing moving, it seems to be moving as you flow. So let me just take two pieces to illustrate that. So if I were to move it, it looks like that thing is moving, correct? Let me put a position in a different, this is too similar. Let me get another two pieces. They are in totally two different positions. Here you are. So if I have two pieces and I move it very fast, it looks like that thing is moving. And that's how you have movable movies. They have photographic frames, and by moving the photographic frames at 33 frames per second, which is the average that is accepted today, they're trying to get it higher so they get clarity. You see a moving object. Your eye cannot detect the movement because it's so fast that it looks like, it's not like a person move. That is very low frame. And so normal frames, so within 1 second, they have 33 frames pass by. So it looks a very normal video. That is the fact that's going on. A video is no different than 33 photographs flowing in front of you per second. And because each photograph got small movement, and so you detect that movement. 33 frames per second is very fast. They're trying to increase that for greater clarity. So what is happening is, if you slow down the frame, then you have this picture. With the encouragement of Brother Yam, he says, hey, pictures and diagrams help him, so here's a little diagram. And in this diagram, let's say the first frame, the first 1/33 of the frame is this. Then the second frame, let's say, is this. And the third frame is this. At 33, as the dots are being formed, if the dots finally fill in all the gaps that are here, at 33 frames a second, you might see a circle or certain shape. But if you stop at any time, you might just see a dot. And that's all that you detect. Now, that's my theory or an explanation on how a person with open vision can see something in a spiritual that is there if it's captured, like angel, demon, or anything. He sometimes see angels in the frames of video, whereas in a photo you can't see, because in the photo it's only one frame, and in that one frame there's only that little bit that is there. And seeing that the angels are probably resonating at different frames per second in itself faster than us, everything has a resonance. So one frame might just capture one dot of light, and 33 frames might capture a little bit more, sufficient for his eyes to form a shape that is there. That's my theory, that's my explanation. Now, how does this explanation help you who do not see in a dimension of spirit? Firstly, we need to understand that seeing in the spirit is just seeing in another frequency. There are frequencies that are not visible to people, they are visible to another person. And I won't call them just photons or light waves. I'll say that there's a certain spiritual frequency, since there's a spiritual dimension. And some people are totally dull. They cannot even capture. Their capture is zero. They cannot capture any spiritual frequencies. But many of us have default capture of the spiritual frequency. Maybe some can see that much. Some can see that much, some can see that much, some can see that much. And as you grow spiritually, your senses might pick up more spiritual frequencies, convert it into audible, or convert it into the spiritual dimension. With that, we want to look at some Bible stories and see how spiritual frequencies are sometimes captured by people at different spiritual level. I have to show that from the Bible, since we are a Bible study, teaching the Bible. And I'm going very slow, very steady, like a little talk, so that the spiritual realm is not something that you have to regard like magical. It is a logical world built as logically as our natural world. You can take sand, heat it up and make it a clay, heat it up, make it into bricks, and then use the bricks to build into a house. There's a scientific process to this world. That's why you have LED lights, your inventions like this computer and cameras, videos, phone. Because the natural world, though it has full of mysteries and laws that we don't always fully understand, is logical. How light flows, how electricity flows, magnetism and how it works has a logical sequence of working when you put those things together. When you burn hydrogen, it will produce hydrogen oxide, which is water. In water vapor, they can capture and get into water. And whether you do it in China, you do it in Antarctica, you do it in Europe, you do it in India, you do it in South America, any place, the same principle work, the same molecules should function the same way. If there were differences, then the science would study why is it different in another place. Maybe there's another cause that make it different. Just like gravitational pull in each place can be different. Do you know you can live in a place with lower gravity and a place with higher gravity? You know how it is so? Because of the distance of the land, the surface of the land to the center of the earth. So if you live in a place where the piece of land, the earth is not 100% perfect circle or sphere. The earth is undulating. In fact, some people say the earth is a pear-shaped thing. So I assume that on certain parts of the surface of the earth, when you live there, it is slightly further from the center of the earth than another part. That means on that part of the earth, it will be slightly less gravitational force. So it means you might weigh less, even though you might actually be the same fatness that is not healthy. Anyway, everything has a scientific principle. The spiritual world and dimension is not illogical. They are laws of the spirit, as Romans chapter 8 verse 1 and 2 tells you. There's a law of the spirit of life. How life operates, how life works, there is a logical consequences and logical flow. Except there is another dimension and another quote-unquote spiritual scientific principles. And it's up to us to discover that. When you discover how the laws of the spirit work, then you can tap those laws and have those blessings work for you as it would work in any other sphere of the spiritual dimension. And to understand those laws and to be able to use those laws to benefit, then we realize it's good. Now some people say, hey, well, the evil spirit tap on those things. Well, they are limited, because among the spiritual laws is the law of love and the law of holiness that God has set. And thus if one does not love, those laws might not work for you anymore. See, spiritual laws work based on certain spiritual principles, and as such the enemy is very limited to certain types of spiritual dimension that he can dominate and create darkness, whereas those from the light, more of the light can work, and they can tap on the light, because love, light and life are based on the same substance from three different angles. Like the life of God is the light of God, as John chapter 1 tells us. And then 1 John, in John's epistle, he tied the word love to the word light. So suddenly all three principles of love, light and love are operating on the same frequency and possibly the same substance in different manifestations. So it's things like that that we need to understand. And it's good to love, then we just have to understand, what does it mean to love? What does it mean to care? What does it mean to have life or to not have life? More life means, if the Bible says abundant life, means there can be more life or less life. More life and less life might cause a person to not just live longer or shorter. It might mean the amount of health that the person experiences versus a person who lives with less health because he got less life flowing through him. So many of these are interesting principles that can be tapped on. So what are the people who encounter the spiritual realm and they have different things that happen to them? Well, let's take one example of Acts chapter 9. In Acts chapter 9, you have the Apostle Paul experiencing the Damascus Road experience. According to the description of the Damascus Road experience, it says in the book of Acts chapter 9 that in verse 3, as he journeyed, he came near Damascus, and suddenly a light shone around him from heaven. Then he fell to the ground and heard a voice saying to him, Saul, Saul, why are you persecuting me? And he said, Who are you, Lord? Then the Lord said, I am Jesus whom you are persecuting. It is hard for you to kick against the goads. So he, trembling and astonished, said, Lord, what do you want me to do? Then the Lord said to him, Arise and go into the city, and you will be told what you must do. And a man who journeyed with him stood speechless, hearing a voice, but seeing no one. Then Saul arose from the ground, and when his eyes were opened, he saw no one. So something struck his eyes, and it was not a permanent blindness, he was temporarily blinded. What were the spiritual things that took place here from the spiritual world? There was a bright light. Now that bright light was the spiritual light. Number 2, there was the voice of Jesus that he heard. Nobody else heard that voice. So these are the what we call manifestations that Paul heard, Paul saw. He did not actually see Jesus' form or shape. He just said he saw a bright light and he heard the voice of Jesus talking in sentences to him. What about the men who were with him? The Bible says in verse 7, the men who journeyed with him stood speechless, hearing a voice, but seeing no one. So apparently, their spiritual eyes could not detect anything. They could not detect anything with their eyes. They did detect some sort of sound waves, or actually spiritual waves that vibrate in them like sound waves. Now this is not a full picture of this phenomena, because Paul gave his testimony 2 other times, and his description is slightly different. So we must put all together on the same incident. And so here we are. The next time he gave account of this incident is in Acts chapter 22. In Acts chapter 22, Paul testified to the same thing. Then he said the same thing in verse 6, 22 verse 6. I journeyed and came near Damascus at about noon. So we know it's about 12 o'clock in the afternoon, 12 p.m. Suddenly a great light came from heaven, shone around me, and I fell to the ground and heard a voice saying to me. So he saw the light, a great light, and he heard a voice. Same phenomena for him. In the conversations recorded, it was slightly longer than he recorded in Acts 9. And you know how when sometimes some things are shared in the Bible, it precedes it doesn't share everything. So do not assume sometimes when something happened that they recorded everything. Many times they only record some things, so it's too much to record. Bible won't be that thick. And so they summarize their recording. But look at verse 9. And those who were with me indeed saw the light and were afraid, but they did not hear the voice of him who spoke to me. Now we put that together. In Acts 9 it said they saw nothing, but what they mean is they didn't see anyone. Here it says they saw the light. Paul, he saw the light and heard the distinct voice of Jesus. And here it says they saw the light, but they did not hear the voice of Jesus. Now, in Acts 9, it says they heard something. Put the two together, it means that the people who were with Paul saw some sort of flashlight, a light that came, and they heard some sort of sound, like a voice, but they did not hear the exact words at all. Their spiritual reception was not that distinct, or maybe God hid it from them. Then you have another account of this in Acts chapter 26. And in Acts 26, as Paul stood before Agrippa, King Agrippa, he said the same thing but a little bit more descriptive. He says, O King, in verse 13, I saw a light from heaven, so it's from the sky, brighter than the sun, shining around me. So the light was brighter than the sun and shining all around him. And then he heard a voice speaking. So Paul's testimony was consistent. But as he described, and then this time the testimony was even longer. Look at how long a conversation was that. If you want the full conversation of Paul and Jesus, which is actually even chapter 26 is a presse. There are some more things he did not record. But here he tells more things that took place, or what Jesus actually said. And then Paul mentioned that this was his encounter with Jesus, and then he was obedient in verse 19 to the heavenly vision. But in verse 14 he says, we all fall down to the ground. So that's interesting, all of them fell to the ground. And Paul says, I heard a voice speaking to me saying in the Hebrew language. So he described the Hebrew language. And so he says, he saw this happening to all of them. What are we to take of this? We can say this, that those whom God wants, it seems that this is controlled by God. I am not sure of how much Paul's spiritual development is at the time, but I assume that he was probably slightly better since he actually loved God, but he didn't realize that he was going against God. He thought he was serving God. In his episode, he said he thought he was serving God. Whereas the others, they were just accompanying him. We do not know their spiritual level or amount of word that they had. Paul had more word than them, but he's interpreting it wrongly. We can only conclude this, that it is possible that the spiritual realm has an effect that some people can detect. Some people cannot detect anything at all. But some people can detect, and they can detect this, let's say, take a piece of paper here, graph paper. Some people can, maybe they can only detect this amount. Some people can detect this amount. And also, even the person who detects this amount might have to only detect it as you see multiple frames. And what we can say is this: the spiritual realm is detectable by those who have spiritual senses, and spiritual senses can be at different level. That is important. We will speak of that in our next part. God bless you and strengthen you into the dimension of the Spirit.